Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chintamani Bhumi Kalpa Briksha Maya Han Charma Chakshe Dheke Tare Prapa Tere Sam. The land there is touchstone, Chintamani, and the forest abound with desire trees. Material eyes see it as an ordinary place. By the grace of the Lord and his dhams, and he himself, by the grace of the Lord, his dhams, and he himself can all be present simultaneously without losing their original importance. Only when one fully develops in affection and love of Godhead can one see those dhams in their original appearance. Srila Narottam Das Thakur, a great acharya in the preceptorial line of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has said, for our benefit that one can perfectly see the dhams only when one completely gives up the mentality of lording it over material nature. One's spiritual vision develops proportionately to one's giving up the debased mentality of unnecessarily enjoying matter. A diseased person who has become diseased because of a certain bad habit must be ready to follow the advice of the physician, and as a natural sequence, he must attempt to give up the cause of the disease. The patient cannot indulge in the bad habit at the same time expect to be cured by the physician. Modern materialistic civilization, however, is maintaining a diseased atmosphere. The living being is a spiritual spark, as spiritual as the Lord himself. The only difference is that the Lord is great and the living being is small. Qualitatively, they are one, but quantitatively, they are different. Therefore, since the living being is spiritual in constitution, he can be happy only in the spiritual sky, where there are unlimited spiritual spheres called Vaikunthas. A spiritual being conditioned by a material body must therefore try to get rid of his disease instead of developing the cause of the disease. Foolish persons engrossed in their material assets are unnecessarily proud of being leaders of the people, but they ignore the spiritual value of man. Such illusioned leaders make plans covering any number of years, but they can hardly make humanity happy in a state conditioned by the threefold miseries inflicted by material nature. One cannot control the laws of nature by any amount of struggling. One must at last be subject to death, nature's ultimate law. Death, birth, old age, and illness are symptoms of the diseased condition of the living being. The highest aim of human life should therefore be to get free from these miseries and go back home, back to Godhead. There's so much in this purport and verse that I want to go back into it. And I'm going to come to the Zoom room for just a little while. May we see the verse? Chintamani Bhumi. So this spiritual world is described throughout the Vaishnava scriptures. And this is rare because in other world scriptures, other scriptures of the world, that is, there are not so many descriptions of the spiritual world. You know, in Japan, there are many Buddhist sects. And some of them actually, historically, some of them started to describe the spiritual world as a personal place. They diverged, went in many different directions, partly as a competition to Christianity, because nirvana is not a very appealing prospect to many people, especially when a loved one dies and they say, what happened? He said, just nothing. It's hard to abide. And I've seen in various temples, you can come back into the room. I've seen in various Buddhist temples, in certain sects of Buddhism, they'll have elaborate paintings on the shrines that show people and trees and animals in the spiritual world. And I noticed that it's particularly fascinating and I say compelling to see personalities and animals. I mean, who doesn't like animals? So you want to go to a place where there's no animals? Give me a break. The spiritual world is full of all forms of life. In fact, they're the original forms of life. Radha Prabhu just put up a rendition of Krishna standing Shamasundar with the cows. Those are his pets. Chintamani Prakara Sadmasu Kalpavriksha. Surabir Abhipalayantam. He has pets, the cows. I mean, who wants to live without pets? And Krishna sure doesn't. He likes his cows and pets and friends and places to go. Everyone wants to have some place to go. Like it's Friday night, where are we going? Let's go someplace. Everyone wants to go someplace. I know when I was a kid, that was the big thing. Where are you going on Saturday? Where are you going on Friday night? That's a natural urge to go someplace. And we also want variety as well. I know I drive Nyarakula crazy because, you know, I'll get into eating in a certain way for a while. And then all of a sudden I just stop and I'll say, that's it for that one. I want something else. I don't like that anymore. What are you talking about? You love that. It's like, not anymore. It's just natural to seek variety. Variety is a mother of enjoyment. And chamatkar, the astonishment the devotees have at the variety in the spiritual world, keeps them always entertained. Krishna is known as Kautu Karnava. He's the source of all entertainment. If people look for entertainment in this world, they want to go to a big concert and see a band play. And the band really has to put up some, they spend $5 million for a concert so that they can put up these huge television screens, and the smoke comes out from behind them and fireworks at the end. Everything has to be, the sound has to be perfect. Everyone wants that, some experience. Chamatkar is like, wow, did you see that? And in the Chintamani Dham, that place is so amazing. These kinds of wondrous activities, mystically created by Krishna's internal potency, are going on all the time. Like the killing of Aghasura is described, how this huge python in the middle of the road wanting to swallow Krishna and his friends, and then they all walk inside and Krishna thinks, what are you doing that for? And then he goes in after them and saves them. It remains a place of pleasure pastimes. Every single day, several times a day, there's some amazing presentation by the internal potency for Krishna's pleasure, and it's ever fresh. So that's the Chintamani Dhamma. We cannot tolerate non-difference, that is neutrality, for very long. Any of you might have had the experience of flying for a long time in a jet. Those long flights, once it starts going over 8 hours, 10 hours, 14 hours, oh my goodness, who can stand it, being inside there? And I remember coming back from a long flight from India, coming back into the San Francisco Bay Area. The sun was coming up, and the pilot came on and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll soon be touching down on terra firma." I think, touching down on terra firma? What's terra firma? I looked it up. It means earth, terra firma. And I was thinking, yeah, I want to touch the earth. I want to see the green trees. I've had enough of sitting in this tube for the last 12 hours and breathing the same air over and over again, or whatever it is. We need, that's the, Prabhupada says that the soul wants to see the free light and the wondrous objects, eternal objects in the spiritual world. So that's what we hanker for. And here in the material world, it's only a reflection. Krishna talks about this in the 15th chapter of the Gita. So this all fits. It all makes sense. What fits? One part is that I'm naturally attracted to the variety of the material world. That makes sense because that's my nature. I want that variety. I want to see the different things. I also want emotion. I want to love people. As one of the things people bring to Krishna consciousness is this idea that I'll have to give up my emotional attachments. And what about my family? And what about loving people and things like that? It's like, it just becomes more intensified in Krishna consciousness. It's the kind of love that you can really connect to on a soul level that's so intense that it's satisfying. That sense of relationship gets satisfied in Krishna consciousness. And Rupa Goswami emphasizes it. He says, Dadati pratigurnati guyamakyati prichiti bhunkte bhojayate chaiva shadviram pratilakshanam. One of the practices of Krishna consciousness as we're coming out of the material world is to reestablish spiritual relationships by interacting. Give gifts. What are the two most famous holidays in America? I can't tell what Shraddha said, but I'll bet she said Christmas and Thanksgiving. But nowadays it's probably Halloween. I don't know. But anyway, Christmas is all about, as far as where I grew up, it had a lot to do with giving. Everyone gets in a giving spirit. When I was a kid, it was just like, what's this holiday for? Yeah, you're supposed to give gifts. Okay, that sounds good. I like it. And then there's Thanksgiving, where you get together and you have something to eat. Everyone cooks something special. Hey, that sounds like bhakti. Give gifts, accept gifts, have something together, and then sing. In happy families, everyone gets together after dinner. They sit on the at the piano, or they bring out, it depends where you live, bring out a banjo or a guitar or something like that, and then just sing. And any Russian friends I've ever had, you go to their house for prasadam, and then they break out the violin and the guitar and the flute, and there's not one instrument they don't play. And then, everyone just enjoys the music. So in the spiritual world, the music is superb. You can tell from Indian classical music, it is, well, on a scientific level, one can compare it to other music sciences, and it's advanced, very advanced. You could say more advanced than many other world systems of music. And it indicates a culture in which aesthetic beauty in music, in food, in relationship, in art is kept in the highest esteem. And that's the spiritual world. All the best art comes from there. All the most beautiful forms. Just talking about it, I'm thinking I'd like to go there. And that's really the process of bhakti. It's just, you just talk about what's actually there, what really exists. And then it's like, all right, let's go. How do I get there? And there's a way to connect to that beauty. And that's what satisfies us. We can't be satisfied with philosophy. We have to actually connect to beauty and feel satisfied in relationships. We need relationships, really deep, intense relationships. That's the desire of the soul, to feel. You have to feel There's separation you feel from others. There's love you feel. There's admiration. You see someone, you say, I want to be like that. I want to serve this person. All these things are there in the true bhakti culture. And that's why it feels so right. And then we have the revealed scriptures that describe the spiritual world, of which this material world is a reflection. So the material world, it's a reflected image. The variety is there, but you don't get the same out of it. There's something wrong with it. What's wrong? Okay, you have some sweet rice, and then somebody says, well, you know, it's expensive, sweet rice, so why don't you add something to it to get more out of it? And then you throw in a handful of maybe powdered cement and mix it up. And say, yeah, there's more of it. Now see how it tastes. And yeah, it's really thick and it's got more volume, but it just doesn't taste right. So the material world, although it looks like the sweet rice, there's something added to it, the three modalities. And there's a kind of addition here that we can't appreciate. It just it doesn't taste right. And we can never get satisfied with it. So then the solutions are just give up eating sweet rice altogether. Not an option, or not for long anyway. Aruya Krishnena Paramparam Tata, Patantyato Nadarta Yushmarangreya. Bhagavatam's opinion is if you don't have beauty and if you don't have that aesthetic, pleasing environment, then eventually you're going to look for it in the material world. It's just a fact. And if you take to the practice of devotional service and you don't get that, if you don't have relationships, and if you're not experiencing the beauty of the connection with Krishna and the Kirtan and the prasadam, like that's why Prabhupada emphasized prasadam so much, is you have to have that experience where you sit down and you have prasadam and you just float off to another planet because it's so sublime. We're not into eating, just like, what is that called? Macrobiotic. So many devotees were macrobiotic heads when they came to Krishna consciousness because the pervading philosophy was just become zero. And, that's a kind of a zero diet, just very dull, plain. And, but in Krishna consciousness, you use curry leaves. Is there anything that tastes better than a curry leaf on this planet? I mean, you put a little curry leaf and some rice and a little ghee, some hot ghee and rice and some curry leaves, and then offered to Krishna with a tulsi leaf. Maybe make some curry, a little curry to go with that, and some, I don't know, what do you want to have? Some subjis that are offered to Krishna. And then, you take that prasadam and then you sit with others and you take prasadam and you can see each other enjoying. This is the spiritual world. And then you feel happy, satisfied. And so association with those who are enjoying in Krishna consciousness. I know when I go to Toronto, I have a few god brothers there. Early in the morning, we're up for Mangalartik there at 4:30 a.m. and we're dancing like, peacocks early in the morning. And sometimes in Toronto in December, it's freezing cold outside. And there we are in this big, huge temple hall, just dancing and dancing, because I have one god brother is named Dharma Prana. I spent years with him in Chicago, Illinois, back in the old days. He's an unbelievable kirtan singer. Interesting story. He had a stroke. I don't know, about 25, 30 years ago, maybe. And one half of his body is completely paralyzed. And also, he couldn't speak, except for he can chant, if you can believe that. And he didn't lose his beautiful voice. He was a professional singer before he joined the Krishna consciousness movement. And he didn't lose his spirit either. He comes to all the programs, and with half a body, he dances. And then we have Bhakti Marg Swami, the most encouraging person on the planet, whomever he sees, wherever he goes, his main purpose of life to encourage others. And then he's a great Kirtaniya. And then my god brother Gora Das comes, and Krishna Das Kaviraj, and then we just have a kirtan, and then we just feel like dancing. We can't help ourselves. We dance and see each other dancing and singing, and we feel happy. So you have to have that. And in the spiritual world, that's what goes on. Krishna dances with his friends, and he plays flute, and there's rhythm, and all the time. Shreya kanta kanta paramapurusha kalpataravo druma bhumischintamani ganami toyam amritam kataganam natyam gamanam api vamshi priyasaki. See the flutes there? And Krishna is the source of all the scales that catch our attention. When you hear a particular scale, and then, oh, that felt really, that was a moving sound, the sound of the scale. And Krishna, he's the origin of all of them. In fact, all of the ragas, you know, in the science of Indian music, there's raga, that there's particular way that we get moved by the tones in a scale and the way they're assembled. And every one of them comes from a personality in the spiritual world. There's millions of them. They all emanate from Krishna's devotees who are pleasing him through the aesthetics of music and reciprocating by playing music, dancing, singing, and so on. And then if you sit down for prasadam with other devotees and you honor prasadam and you feel happy, and then you have something to do to engage, to like spread Krishna consciousness, or you have a job for typing. Like, okay, take this stack and type everything out. Or you have some job in cleaning. It's your job to clean the temple or to take care of the vehicles. In St. Louis, Missouri, we used to have about 20 vans, and they each one of them, they all looked exactly the same except they had a number on them. And they would go out from the temple. So on traveling Sankirtan, they'd come back on the weekends, and our head cook and head mechanic Datta Prabhu had a tent, and they'd all drive in the tent and he'd service the vans, and he was always fully engaged. So we can connect with the eternal spiritual world through the process of bhakti, and we have to have that engagement and also contact with the aesthetics of the spiritual world imported here through the great devotees in their songs and their bhajans and the mantras and the music and so forth, in order to lift us above the mundane reality or temporary forms and sounds of the material world. Otherwise, it's guaranteed we'll go back into the sounds and sights and relationships of the material world unless we have superior ones, which are spiritual. Om Tat Sat. Now let's just have a few reflections or questions. And the board is now open. Sindhu Kanya Devi Dasi has opened the board for your reviews. Go ahead, Kota Karnava. I can tell you to say something. You're smiling. Bhakti Raffaella, thank you for terra firma is in Italian, used also related to sailing, earth being still, not waving, like sea, waves giving the impression that in a navy, the ground is always moving. Thank you very much, Bhakti Raffaella. Terra firma. The spiritual world is the real terra firma because it's the stable place. This material world's always moving. Krishna describes it in the Gita.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I was just smiling at the comment that Malini Mataji mentioned in the chat box. She said that Um, she has a desire that we can have 20 Sankirtan vans someday in the future, like St. Louis. So that was the comment I was smiling at.
Yeah, we can have that. And goes to the ambition. We all have this tendency to want to build something. We're little creators. And if you have a stake in the Krishna consciousness movement where you can build something for Lord Chaitanya, then you'll feel satisfied that you have some enterprise. So Malini, you can get that 20 vans. You just put a little number on each side and they send them out to places all over the country. Madhav Govindu, you'll go?
Yes, Maharaj, definitely.
He'll go. He'll take one. There's one van. Anybody else want a van? Just say yes, and then you can sort it out later. Okay, Subhadra will take a van for sure. She's up for all these things.
We will also take one.
You'll take a van? Okay. Malini, you got 17 to go.
also take one.
Okay, one more van for Krishna. Okay, we can get vans. No problem. It's not a big deal.
Maharaj,
Yes.
just a reflection. It's a very good point today. You raised the example of sweet rice and then the cement.
Yeah.
Is very accurate example of how we can experience this material world. We are making grand planes. Building planes, building big skyscraper buildings. Going from one country to another country to we are all doing this for happiness. But unfortunately, we can see from our own experience that there is really no happiness from anywhere in this material world. Whether you go to the USA or go to this country or that country, there is misery everywhere. There is death everywhere. There is unhappiness everywhere. And the dissatisfaction, we can also see dissatisfaction. So the only solution is like taking up the mission of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Thank you very much, Tadiya Seva. Those words will resonate in our minds and hearts. Let's look at the verse again. There was a lot in the purport. I want to go through a few points here. It's poetry, actually. So the verse, the land there is touchstone, Chintamani, and the forest abound with desire trees. Material eyes see it as an ordinary place. And then Prabhupada writes, by the grace of the Lord, his dhammas, and he himself can all be present simultaneously without losing their original importance. Only when one fully develops in affection and love of Godhead can one see those dhammas in their original appearance. So in the Brahma Samhita, Brahma says, Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santaksadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti. Yam shama sundaram achintya gunaswarupam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. The way that we see Krishna is by changing the way we see the world. If we're imbued with love for Krishna, by getting it through association with those who love him, then we'll see him in everything and see him within our own hearts naturally. So that's the difficulty, is that I'm afflicted with avidya or ignorance, which really means I have an aversion to hearing about Krishna, to being with Krishna. It's irrational, but it is a result of developing this kind of aversion that the whole world looks like a gray place. Srila Narottam Das Thakur, a great acharya in the preceptorial line of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has said for our benefit that one can perfectly see the dhams only when one completely gives up the mentality of lording over material nature. So let's just discuss for a minute what it means to completely give up the mentality of lording it over material nature. So there are ways that I want to manipulate every circumstance in my life so it comes out in my favor. Yes or no? Yeah. And so it's ingrained, this idea that I'm the controller, I'm the center. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, try to be not like that. Try to be, that was a funny sentence, but anyway, try to be not like that. Be humble. Don't be the center, but try to, just in a simple way. I notice about myself, say I get together with a few people and devotees and we're sitting, and then I want to bring the conversation back to what I'm doing. So I did this, and this is what I think, this is my opinion on the whole thing. Not that we become nondescript, but the fact is that I notice it in myself. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, try to be a little more deferential to others, and step out of the center and see how you feel about it. A devotee named Karandar Prabhu from the old days, he was a big leader. Prabhupada gave him a lot of responsibility because he was super smart. And he became one of the first GBCs. He was a temple president for a while. His brother Keshava was also the temple president up here in San Francisco. In any case, I saw a memories video that he made talking about Prabhupada, and he was saying about himself that when he left LA to travel to a few other places, he started feeling uncomfortable, and then he did some self-searching and he noticed, I feel uncomfortable because I'm not the center of the attention here. I'm not the main one in charge in these other places. Therefore, I feel a little uncomfortable, like a small fish in a big pond. And so that feeling can actually be a taste for being humble and not in the center, can be developed because of what it offers us to step out of that mentality. And as we talked about before, the nectar of insignificance, that I'm not so important. I'm letting others be important. I'm putting Krishna in the center. Then how do we feel? And if we can start to feel the nectar of that insignificance, then it's helpful in opening ourselves to Krishna consciousness. Shamarupa Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Pranam. Thank you for
Hare Krishna Shamarupa, good to see you.
Thank you for another wonderful and inspiring class as always. I really liked so many things, but one point I really liked your closing remarks, like before concluding the class. You mentioned that we should connect ourselves to spiritual vibration, Acharya's prayers, in order to transcend us from the material entanglement. Otherwise, for sure, we'll be trapped with the material vibration. That was so powerful, actually. I was just reading Chaitanya Bhagavati yesterday. In the opening, like in the beginning section, it was mentioning how Srivas and Advaita Acharyas mentioned, they used to always loudly chant and with ghanta and all, and people would be like, they'll not appreciate it so much. And even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu afterwards, but they will be in complete ecstasy. Even afterwards, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he used to always encourage chanting, and he used to chant and dance. In fact, the whole pastime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from babyhood also, he would encourage everybody to chant. And even in the later pastime, it's always about chanting and reading Bhagavatam. So I was just remembering your instruction also, that you concluded so beautifully, that we should always some prayer, some chanting, so that we can pull ourselves out of this vibration. Thank you so much for that, Maharaj.
Nice point, Shamarupa Prabhu. Ganta Bhaje. And then Madhur, Madhur, Madhur Bhaje. In Bhaktivinoda Thakur's song about the Panchatattva and his darshan of them, and how the devotees are singing, and the tumult of the kirtan is going on. It carries one away. How many of you have ever been in a kirtan where you were carried away? It wasn't that you were just enjoying the kirtan, but you went crazy, actually. You lost yourself. You jumped up, you started dancing. You didn't care what anybody else thought, what you looked like dancing. Yeah, and you didn't even practically know. You were just kind of lifted off the ground because the kirtan was so intense, and there was a spontaneous combustion in the crowd and everybody got up. Can you remember a kirtan like that? That's important. Yes, Shraddha.
Maharaj, I was remembering how you measure the potency of a kirtan by saying that if Rasik Shekhar Prabhu starts jumping, this means that the kirtan is really going good. So I remember.
That's right. The memories of those kirtans downtown Palo Alto, before we even had sit-down kirtan, we would just stand there and then we'd walk around. And Rasika Shekhar Prabhu, he's a distinguished gentleman, a doctor, and stately. He's stately looking. And I always thought he looks like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya amidst so many others. And then we'd have the kirtan is going and going. He'd be coming from work wearing his very sort of casual but very nice formal clothes. And then all of a sudden the kirtan would reach the apex and he'd begin dancing and just going wild. And I can remember watching people walking down the street watching. It's like, wow, how can you do that? It's a mystic power that you can be on the street and just dance in abandon like that. And yes, as Shraddha so aptly remembers, that it was a barometer. It's like when Rasika Shekhar dances, we know the kirtan hit that chord where we're carried away from. And this point that Shamarupa Prabhu is making, we need that. We have to be in some kirtan where we're actually lifted up. The first time I came to the first morning, I remember I was at the temple. I had joined in the afternoon. And then the next day, and there were a couple of sannyasis there. They had recently taken sannyas, and they'd come from Vrindavan. And they were staying in the temple. Actually, they put me in the garage next to the temple. That was my new bhakta quarters. And those sannyasis were staying there too. So we came from Mangalartik in the morning, and we came in and the kirtan got going. And they were so excited. They were so into kirtan. They were playing and they would jump high. Especially one of them was kind of an athlete before he joined. He could jump really high. He'd play the drum and jump high into the air. And from my eyes, I didn't know what was going on, except I was ecstatic. And to my vision, every time they started jumping and dancing, I said, now they're seeing Krishna. They just saw him again. And I was intrigued by it. You know, the envelopment of the kirtan with the devotees dancing on all sides. I have a godbrother. He's still alive and well. I think he lives in the Dham. His name's Vijatatma. He used to dance at every kirtan. It doesn't matter how slow or fast it was. He would jump up and down and dance at every kirtan to take advantage of it. And I know that that kind of engagement, being absorbed in kirtan and feeling of course, his philosophy was, if you're not feeling like dancing, dance anyway, and then we'll feel like dancing. What is the harm? But that kind of absorption is important to carry us away. We can't live on just philosophy or even just japa. We're not Haridas Thakur. We have to have the experience, all these various experiences to make us feel whole in Krishna consciousness. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, I have reflections here. Lots of them. Mayank, I'm still appreciating Bhakti and Raphaela's terra firma thing. Mayank, based on today's discussion, it seems that in this whole life, we are all working on creating our personal spaceship based on our consciousness and activities. At the end of life, this spaceship can take us to either material planets if we remain in Maya, or spiritual planets if we engage in bhakti. Nice point. It was one that Prabhupada made, an easy journey to other planets. I must admit that the title of that book intrigued me. I wanted to read that right away. It was one of the books that was advertised in the Back to Godhead magazine that I got, Easy Journey to Other Planets. And I said, I got to hear what that's about. And it's a science that we are the spaceship. And the way that we're developing our consciousness, Krishna said, is consequential, highly consequential. In fact, I heard a lecture just yesterday where Prabhupada said, if you have a pinch of desire for enjoying the material world, the material nature will accommodate you. And so we may think, well, how could it possibly be that I don't have a pinch of desire for material enjoyment? Because if we have a superior enjoyment, if we only want to be in Kirtan, if we only want to be taking prasadam with the devotees, and if we only want 20 vans for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our sense of social engagement and everything to a superior level, then you get, okay, you have spiritual desires, and that's reasonable. That can be done. And then at the time of death, yang vapi smaran bhavam tajat yante kalevram. There's a way that we're propelled. Okay, Malini's gonna weigh in on the vans and other things probably too. Go ahead, Malini.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances, Prabhu. Prabhu, I had a question regarding the Gaurangera Jyotipada, the song by Narottam Das Thakur. It is there, one of the verses that says that one who understands that the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are free from material contamination, and they are his associates, then they immediately be promoted to the Goloka Vrindavan. So how can we see that amongst the devotees, everybody as associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and they're free of material contamination?
Well, I was thinking just recently about how rare devotees are, because in walking through the park, I hear some of the conversations that are going on. For instance, early this morning, I went for a walk and I heard conversation going on, and a verse came to my mind. Shrotav Yadini Rajendra Narinam Santi Sahasrasaha Apashyatam Atmatapvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. Shukadev Goswami mentions that you can understand the material atmosphere by the conversations going on. What are people listening to and hearing? And I just overheard a mundane conversation where I detected that it was a conversation just for the sake of talking. And one person was saying something that was unimportant in relationship to our ultimate goal of life. And the other person was just engaging them, listening sort of politely. And I thought, all these conversations go on in various circles around the world, but those whose conversations have come to the point of discussing Krishna and Lord Chaitanya's teachings, Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, and who are interested in hearing it, are actually liberated souls because of their deliberate choice of what they want to hear. To the degree that I'm interested in hearing about Krishna, to that degree that I'm a liberated soul. This is the equation Jiva Goswami gives. We can tell for ourselves, we can judge it in ourselves how much I'm attracted to hearing about Krishna consciousness, about Krishna. I'm going in that direction. So Rupa Goswami says, Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasa gira, nikila apyavasta su jivan mukta su uchite. Those who are even in this world, in this body, fully engaged with their minds, their words, and their bodies, they're liberated even in this life and in this body. And it's also inconceivable of how powerful Lord Chaitanya's mercy is, because as we can see, even those who didn't intend to get his mercy in certain ways. Gopinath Patanyayaka was in a very difficult situation with the government. He had some indiscretion in his taxes, in paying his taxes. And, he was unnecessarily being punished, and then afterwards there was a inordinate result from Lord Chaitanya's mercy, that he was not only saved from the punishment but reinstated in his work. We're not interested in getting some material benefit, but the author Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami points out that Mahaprabhu's mercy came to him automatically. And so what to speak of those who have an inkling of desire to help in the Sankirtan movement? That's not the perfect comparison. I would compare more to those who were inimical towards Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then still were able to get his blessings. And then what to speak of those who deliberately line up to be in his service by joining the Sampradaya, by then changing their lifestyle habits, all for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and maintaining that throughout their life. How abundant, what to speak of automatic, will be the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So if we think in terms of how merciful Krishna is even to demons, what to speak of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is more merciful than Krishna, and that those who are interested in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and serving in his mission, how fortunate they are, and how automatic Lord Chaitanya's mercy is for those devotees. That's one way of looking at it, Malini. Okay, we have either Sukeshri or Ramakrishna.
Prabhu's first, Prabhu.
Oh, okay. That's your mantra. You always say these things. Okay, go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Madhur Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. I was a little tired yesterday and started putting bhakti community stickers to the pamphlets. So I just, my mind was saying like, why are you wasting your time? Like, look out the window. So many things are going on. So I was just thinking like, enough is enough. Like, you already chewed a lot. Like, so let's listen one lecture and then see how you respond. Like, I was just laughing myself. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Shraddha, what was his main point? I'm trying to understand.
Sorry.
So Maharaj, his main point was how the mind gets distracted. So he was trying to put some stickers, and the mind was saying, look out of the window and see wonderful things going outside. But then he has a realization that he had chewed enough of that. Punar punar charvita. So,
Oh, that's a good realization. To actually feel it in ourselves that I've had enough of chewing the material world. Let me try for something else. It's a difficult situation, though. I have to acknowledge this, because although to say, okay, there's a higher taste, and then there's the material world, which is chewing the chewed, there's an interim point too, where we may get caught. And Krishna acknowledges this in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, just because you know there's a higher taste in Krishna consciousness, and even if you've had it a few times, it doesn't mean that you live there completely. And there's a journey to take to get from being attracted to the material world and settling for that to the full-time engagement in Krishna consciousness, where the taste is so full-blown that there's no going back. There's a wide desert to cross there. So we have to have help to get over that desert, in a caravan together. This is what we got right here, a little caravan. And, going across that gap so that we can get to the full-time engagement and the full-blown taste for Krishna consciousness. So don't be discouraged if you end up in that very interesting space where, okay, I don't have full taste for Krishna consciousness. I already know the material world is dry, but I still can't give it up. So what is Krishna's advice? He says in a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Jata Shraddha Makatasu Nirvina Sarvakarmasu Veda Dukkha Makankamams Prityage Panishvara Tato Bhajeta Mamprita Shraddhalur Drudanishchaya Jushamanams Tatankamams Dukko Darkams Chagarayan. He mentions that somebody may know that the material world is a dry place, and that everything they do here for sense gratification leads to misery. You may know that fully, he says. But Parityage Pyanishvara means you may not have the power to give it up yet. Isn't that an interesting space? On a scale of 1 to 10, how interesting is it? A
It's
9,
10.
6, 2, 1. Okay, so then he says, what should you do? Don't give up. Keep going. Keep stay in the process. I think the very fact that he acknowledges that we may be in that space sometimes is very encouraging, isn't it? That he knows, okay, yeah, you're going to be in that space. Keep going, because gradually you'll come to the ultimate stage. And he says you can have a little pinch of remorse, but don't get all depressed, because first of all, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that you're going to get there no matter what eventually. So don't worry. It's not that you're going to miss it. And second of all, if you get morose, chronically morose about your condition, that I'll never get out of this, then you can sabotage yourself, self-sabotage. It's one of the tricks of Maya to make me disappointed or illusioned, maybe blame the process, blame somebody else, blame myself, I'll never be there. So he said, don't do that either. So there's a little advice that he gives there. Sukeshri.
Prabhu, I was just thinking, you had mentioned about one of the devotees, one of the persons who had gone to a different temple, and he realized that, he was usually leading, but then there he was not. And I was just thinking I understood this way, correct me if I'm wrong. I was just thinking that a living entity, till the living entity gives up the ahankar, it's me, for satisfying my ego, I'll never be able to really satisfy Krishna. So how do we do that? Just giving up that I'm the doer. How much ever I try, I'm not able to give it up. So.
Well, one way it's very convenient is in our Sankirtan party is to think more team rather than the individual. I've noticed that this is very practical, actually, because you get a lot of realizations from not being the main thing, the main feature. Let the team be the main thing. I preach this all the time, and it's really a kind of a practice for our Krishna consciousness that I'm not the head person, I'm not the best, and so then go for the team. How did the team do rather than how did I do, and how did I show up on it? And if you can transfer more towards, as long as the world's doing well in Krishna consciousness, rather than my score shows up, you can actually go there. You can transfer your intention that I want to see the team successful to please Prabhupada. And if you do that, it seems like a risk to your false ego that, but wait a minute, I won't be acknowledged. Well, how am I going to get credit for it? Don't worry, Krishna knows who's doing what. In fact, it's mentioned, say there's like a festival going on and there's 200 devotees sitting making garlands. And then they put them in a huge pile. And then the garlands all get offered to the Lord. He knows who made what garland. In fact, he knows what plant made the flowers for each garland. And he keeps track of all these things. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishani chabhutani mam tu vedana kashyana. Krishna says, nobody knows me, but I know all of you. I know what's going on out there. So don't worry about it. And if you can do that, use your engagement in the Sankirtan movement to transfer your sense of like, I did this, I'm the one, where's my recognition, to like, let it just happen for the service of Srila Prabhupada. And then if you risk it on that level, then you'll start to see, actually, I feel better about life when I do that. And then it's a possibility you can actually start to transfer all your assets out of the false ego bank account and put them into like, as long as it's service for Krishna, then I'm satisfied. That's the wealthiest type of person who'd already got all their assets out of that bank account that's going to be at some point closed and moved it into Krishna's bank account. Then you really got some wealth.
Thank you, Prabhu. I just feel it's like the tar stuck on me. Like the doer mentality, it's like the tar on the road. It doesn't, it is so difficult to take out. Thank you, Prabhu.
Welcome to the material world. And that, that tar example, it's a sticky substance. So no doubt the material world is a sticky place, but the Maha Mantra is the ultimate solvent. You ever get anything on your couch or your rug or your best kurta or sari, and then it's like, this is never coming out, and your friend goes over, no, you need a little club soda, that's all. You put it on there, it's like, yeah, it came right out. There are solvents. There's a solvent for everything in this world. And the solvent, the universal solvent, is the holy name. And so keep chanting, and the solvent will actually dissolve the stickiness of the material world, the false ego that seems like it'll never come out, like mango sap. In fact, the gopis said, Krishna is like a mango sap. It gets in your hair and you can never get it out. So like, we're trying to forget him, they said, and then we can't forget him. So then in spiritual life, it goes the other way. You get so entangled in Krishna consciousness, then you can't get that out of you either instead of the material world. So just transfer it.
Thank you.
Bali Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, please accept my
You at
humble obeisances.
Kusum? You're at Kusum Sarovara.
Kusum Sarovar, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances.
He's a mystic yogi. He travels to all the dhams. Hare Krishna.
Your mercy, Prabhu. I'm very fortunate to join at least Zoom, always watching the social media. So I'm just realizing that today, maybe many people forget the days, March 13th, we're celebrating 1 year of pandemic, official pandemic in US, which was declared in March 13th, 2020, the Friday. And it is just 1 year, Saturday, one day off. And after this, likely New Year starts likely in South India, Amavasya, right? The Sunny Amavasya happened yesterday. So we celebrated, and it is mentioned that those people who are expert in developing more skills and determinations, they are successful in the pandemic. And as a team ISV, we have developed our skills in distributing books in the pandemic, like virtual, online, and etc., which is people are following. And not only that, we are not proud of our skills or proud of our determinations, rather than also we are dependent on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Just like one reflection I got from the Madhya Lila, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how he cured the diseases of Amogha. And when he was there, Sarvam Bhattacharya is not there, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and Amogha kahe tari buke hasta dila, means just placing the hand on the chest of Amogha, the disease is gone. So similarly, we are dependent on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, "Enechi osodhi maya nasivara lage." This real vaccine medicine is this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And thank you, Prabhuji, for you are showering your mercy every Saturday. We are so fortunate this whole weekend gets purified by your causeless mercy giving to all of us. I wanted to share my gratitude to you for this pandemic 1 year. You are developing determination and enthusiasm in all of us.
Thank you so much, Bali Mardan Prabhu, for your reflections and your generosity towards me. Yeah, I think that it'll go down as one of the most productive times in our history. It was very different, but we were able to, in many ways, in personal practices, all of us isolate and look at it, examine our practices. How do we do sitting in a room? I don't know, everyone has different circumstances, but there was some self-reflection required during the pandemic. And also, as Bali Prabhu points out, this development of skills. And it's marked that all over the world, devotees who applied themselves during the pandemic found that they broke through in many different ways and found new and better ways to spread Krishna consciousness. So thanks for reminding me that it's a 1 year, we've had a gift from Krishna to have this opportunity to go through this all together. It'll be on our portfolio permanently. Okay, Radha Kripa Prabhu.
Guru Maharaj. Maharaj, I wanted to add to your point when you mentioned about Krishna knows everything. Even the tree from where those flowers are brought to make those garlands. I remember actually your two instructions when when you mentioned that, I think you shared a story about Prabhupada, that one of your god brother might be, he wanted to go very close to Prabhupada. And then as he touched Prabhupada, went really close. And then he really felt that he's so far from him, even so close. And then also, I remember another instruction which you mentioned in your previous lectures also, that the service, devotion service is absolute. It's not that if you're doing a pujari service or you're doing far away from cleaning the toilets, there's a difference in that one. And that the same mood we try to inculcate in our Janmashtami parking, because when we were trying to, organize, it's very difficult to understand that one. But once you understand that the person who is sitting in a parking lot, just taking care about the car on the day when everybody wanted to be in front of, Radha Mother Mohan's, deities and wanted to have darshan, that understanding, I think I really core of my heart is thankful. You are addicted that, the doubt in our mind, you have to be there. You want to be first in the line. That disappeared. Now with that clarity, we can not only do ourselves, but also encourage other people that the service is absolute. And then, Krishna noticed that it is not that you need to tell anyone. So we use that one. It really helped us to recruit the people, tell them, even if you're so far off, you are far more connected than maybe who are so close, because they may not be there at all. So I just thought to share your two instruction, which is very useful and helpful.
These are important points. Prabhupada, because he had that vision, the potential of every living entity, and how devotional service is absolute, he had the capability of encouraging people everywhere. As an example, one of my godbrothers is an artist. He once bemoaned the fact that he couldn't go on book distribution. He's always painting. And we'll hear from Dhriti Dasi tomorrow. I was interviewing her just recently, and she was talking about her sojourn in Krishna consciousness and how she actually joined Krishna consciousness right at the time of the Chaitanya Charitamrita marathon, and was kind of thrown into the marathon. And anyway, more about that later. I don't want to take too much time on that, but my point is that Prabhupada told this artist who said, oh, all the book distributors, they're going out, and here I am, I'm just painting. And Prabhupada said, the artists are the best book distributors. And Prabhupada had a way of encouraging every one of the devotees by showing them how service is absolute. It's the mood in which you do it that's most important. And a couple of devotees who didn't come to the Mayapur festival one year, Rohini Sutta and Manidhar, who are famous book distributors in Switzerland. And they didn't come to the Mayapur festival, which is pretty much unheard of back in those days when Prabhupada was there. Prabhupada asked where they were, and he said they wanted to stay and distribute books, and Prabhupada deeply appreciated it, that they were connected through their service in separation. There's a couple more comments and questions. I'm going to finish off the board, and then we'll go for the Guru Puja. Not that we'll go anywhere, but we'll transport ourselves through the Guru Puja. A question. This is coming from Ankit. Based on today's discussion, can we say that Krishna's beauty is his most attractive opulence out of the 6 opulences he possesses? Yes, it's mentioned in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the prominent feature of the spiritual world is wonderment. And that wonderment is based on the fact that Krishna is always getting more beautiful every time you see him. Chitralekha Saki says, I was asking some friends if it is a good idea to get out of the material world. One of them said, it may create a desire to die quickly to go to the spiritual world. Please, how may I best answer her? Well, it depends what you consider to be death. So actually our philosophy is maranam before smaranam. Die to live. So death actually means giving up our proprietorship here in the material world. You can die before you die. In fact, that's how you cheat death. Prabhupada said, cheat death before death cheats you. So how do you cheat death? Just tena tyaktena bunjita magradhaka sasuddhanam. Give up your proprietorship. It doesn't belong to me. It's all for Krishna. And then when death comes to knock and says, okay, give me all your stuff, say, sorry, it's in a revocable living trust. I already gave it to Krishna. I don't have any. Just like the government, just give me your money. It's like, I don't have any money. It's in a trust. Put all your desires into the trust. Put all your ambitions into that trust. So it can't be touched by any collector who comes by. And that's what real death means. And so you don't have to worry about it. We're not going to, the mood of devotional service is not to die, because Prabhupada also mentioned there was one devotee who committed suicide because he thought he made a huge discretion. And Prabhupada said he has avoided service. So even if you feel like leaving, Sanatana Goswami thought, I'll jump in front of the Rath Yatra cart. I'm not worthy of being in Mahaprabhu's association. I'm not doing anything worthy. So I'll jump in front of the Rath Yatra cart in Mahaprabhu's presence. He didn't tell anybody, but Mahaprabhu's omniscient. So he told him one day, I don't approve of your program. He said, if I could have attained Krishna by committing suicide like that, I would have already done it 1,000,000 times. So that's not the process. So if there is a desire that, okay, let me die quickly, go to the spiritual world, you go to the spiritual world while you're in this body. It's not that we're in some material consciousness and then we die and then all of a sudden we go into, no, while we're in this lifetime, we develop Krishna consciousness. And that same consciousness is transferred into the spiritual world. So die to live. Maranam before smaranam. Prem Sarovara. Reflection, Mahaprabhu conducting Vyasa Puja of Lord Nityananda itself taught us the value of humility by action. Yes, he took one of the kalpanas of Nityananda Prabhu, he put it into strips. He said, wear this on your head. This will give you sense control. Sri Madhava Mahotsava, a reflection. Thank you for channeling the spiritual world such a practical way. It reminds me of how the subject matter of the Srimad Bhagavatam becomes sweeter when received through the mouth of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. When you were talking about music and rhythm, I was reminded of some kirtans of Indra Prabhu. I can't really understand it, but makes me want to dance without any reservations. It carries me away. That's important. The kirtan should make us, we should want to be carried away by the kirtan. And there's only one direction we get carried by kirtan, and that's to the spiritual world. And final reflection from Shraddha. I read in Genevieve Harrison's Instagram that one of her devotee friends got caught up in a stream of Ganga in Rishikesh and was getting washed away. Before the help reached, this devotee thought of detergent jingle that the devotee had been listening to through childhood. Yeah. The devotee later wondered how deep-rooted that jingle was in the consciousness of this devotee, that at the time of almost death, that's what surfaced in the mind despite all the chanting and hearing. Yeah. So that's we should be a little slightly concerned about that, not to take too many more jingles in, and take the holy name in as much as possible. Prabhupada writes in the 17th mantra of the Sri Upanishad, Vayuat Anilam Amritam Atedam Bashmantam Shariram, Om Krato Smara, Kritam Smara. Finish it? Very good. That at the time of death, the devotee is thinking, please remember all my sacrifices, my Lord. And then Prabhupada writes very definitively that you don't have to remind Krishna of your sacrifices. He knows what you've done. He said, so if somehow or other the devotee becomes disoriented at the time of death and can't remember Krishna, because it's a very confusing situation, because I'm so used to being my body. And then when I'm separating from it, it's like, wait, what? So there's a way in which Prabhupada says that Krishna won't forget you. So I know that may sound antithetical what I said a few minutes ago, but the point is that Krishna doesn't forget how we've dedicated ourselves throughout this lifetime. And he will help us in those situations, even when the jingles come up, he can override all of those things by his mercy at the time of death. But it's a good reminder that we have work to do. So if we stay engaged in the beauty of Krishna consciousness, the hearing process, and so forth, and that becomes our primary interest in life, that's a good place to be. And it's important to actually develop that, not philosophically, not think about it, but actually do it, so that we really do have an interest in hearing Krishna Katha, burning desire. And that's what one of Prabhupada's godbrothers used to say, is the safe side. Get on the safe side of life and transfer your affection and your hearing process over to Krishna Katha. Better transfer your assets now before the Yamaraj collection agency comes, and better to transfer them all out and put them in a different account, the Krishna Trust Fund, before he comes and says, okay, give it all back. Hare Krishna.
Nachari Marman, Nachari Marman, Nachari Marman, Nachari Marman, hey, Nachari Marman, Nachari Marman, Nachari Marman, Nachari Marman.